options in today's marketplace. And we're going to start off with how to get equity investors. In today's marketplace with independent films, you can do pre-sales, which means you can pre-sell your movie to both international and domestic territories to help you raise the money to produce your movie. But as the market is getting more difficult and a lot of the buyers are getting more sophisticated, even if you have a great package with a really good director and a really good cast, there's really only so much you can do in pre-sales because a lot of the distributors are wanting to wait and see a finished product. So equity investors are becoming more and more important in the independent marketplace. So as we're independent filmmakers and we want to control our product, we have a script that we now control. We have directors that we want to attach. How do we get that made? So we're going to walk through all those steps and we're going to start with an equity investor. So how do you get equity investors? So the first thing you need to know about how to get an equity investor is that you need to be prepared all the time to be able to talk to an equity investor way before you think you're going to be scheduled or to be around a lot of equity investors. You need to have your pitch together for yourself. There's going to be many times in this process where you're going to meet people off the cuff that will be film financiers and you won't know that you were going to meet them. So you have to have your pitch together all the time. So when you meet somebody, you're prepared to give them your 1 to 2 minute pitch and get them interested in your project. If you wait until you get into a room of investors when you're at a film festival, or if you're at a gathering and you happen to meet some investors and you prepared just for those events, you're not doing yourself justice in the sense that you can meet an investor anywhere, any place, anytime. And I'm sure Jen has had those experiences where she's met people that have put money into her projects in the most unlikely places. And the reason why that happens a lot to people in this business is because you're around a lot of different people that have, different want to invest in things. So you have to be prepared. So the way you get prepared is to have your 1 or 2 minute, presentation ready to go. You want to practice your presentation in front of a mirror, pitch it to your friends, be ready off the cuff to be able to talk to someone intelligently and with a level of sophistication. And you got to be able to sell yourself in that 1 or 2 minutes. You got to be ready for it. And there's no way to be ready for it if you're waiting to get ready for it. The only way to be ready is to practice way ahead of time. Practice it in your car, practice it with your friends. Be ready to talk to an investor at any moment. And then if you're ready for that, then when that moment comes, you're going to give a great pitch, and then that potentially could be an investor in your movie. The other thing to understand about investors is that you only have so much time with these guys. They're all very busy, and then they have very short attention spans. So you have to be able to hit the key notes very quickly and get them excited very quickly. And that part of being able to do that is to know what your pitch is and to be prepared. If you're not prepared, you could potentially be rambling on, talking about things that they may not be interested in, that you think are interesting, and you kind of get off point, and you can turn off an investor when you do those kinds of things. But when you're prepared and you have your speech and your pitch together, it'll come off much more effective to an investor. The other thing to understand about investors is you need to go to places where film investors are. It's hard to find investors if you're not in the places where they hang out. And in Los Angeles, and especially at film festivals, those are golden opportunities at various events in LA and at film festivals to meet investors. Some of the examples of that are going to friends of yours screening, right? If your friend just finished a movie and they're screening it and they have a little after party, there's going to be investors at that after party. You need to be ready to talk to people about your project, have your 2 minute pitch ready to go, and be prepared that you're going to meet people that night. Then if you go to a film festival, you can meet an investor at a film festival anywhere. You can meet them in the lobby of a hotel. You can meet them at a screening. You can meet them at a lunch with a friend. They're all over the place. So targeting various film festivals that are affordable to you to be able to get to and to be able to spend 2 or 3 days at those festivals and sort of plan out a course while you're there is a very good place to meet film investors who have probably invested in other movies that would probably be interested in your film as well. So film festivals are an excellent place to do that. But overall, when you're talking with investors, what you need to understand is you are starting a business. As a film producer, you are a business person. Your business is your film project. And when you are a business person and film is your project, you also have to learn how to be a salesman. You have to learn how to talk to people comfortably when the situation may be uncomfortable. The more confidence you have when talking with these people, and the more confidence you have when talking to anybody about your project is going to come off as being much as high at a level as you want it to be. If you're not confident in what you're saying and you're not confident in how you're saying it, people aren't going to have confidence in you as a business person that can pull off making a great film. So it all comes down to being prepared. And when you are prepared and these opportunities present themselves, you're a business person, you're starting a business, and you need to become a business person, a salesperson, and people have to believe that you can do what you can do. When we do our course, we're going to be diving deep into how you develop the skills to be able to do all these things and make you more comfortable when you're talking to equity investors. So we can't get into the details today, but one of the things that we're going to focus on is give you all the skills you need to feel comfortable when you're talking to investors, how to put together a little pitch deck that can follow up your first investor conversation, or if an investor wants to know more about your project, we're going to talk about how you meet investors and then the best way to follow up with investors with a deck, which you can present to them, which will show them everything about their project, your project, that they need to know so they can get interested in the project. So equity investors in today's marketplace is really important, and all of us have to be on top of it and be prepared for that and have all the elements to your project together, come off with a lot of confidence, and finding investors is going to be a lot easier for you. Okay, let's move to the next step. So everyone's looking for different ways to start attaching money to their project. And one of the easiest ways to do that is deciding what state you want to shoot in to maximize the tax credits available in various states. Almost every state has some sort of tax incentive program. Some states have they give you more of a percentage of what you spend in the state back to you as a filmmaker, and some give you a smaller percentage. So it's really up to you as the producer and as the business person that you are as the producer to do your research on various states and what their tax incentive program looks like. Because it's all the devil is in the detail when it comes to these states and their tax incentive programs. You have to read them. You have to go through them very closely to determine which spends in your budget are going to qualify for the state. Some states will allow you to bring in people like your director of photography or your cast, and they will qualify those costs as part of the tax credit. And if they give you 25% of a tax credit on your costs, all those costs will be included in that 25%, and it raises up the value of your tax credit. If you go to a state that doesn't qualify people that come into the state, your director of photography doesn't qualify, potentially your cast doesn't qualify. So it's very important to understand the rules of each state and what costs qualify. One of the most important costs that you want to qualify is your cast, because a lot of the times the cast is some of the largest costs in your budget. So you want to find states that will qualify your cast, not just local cast, meaning that if you shoot in Louisiana and you hire a local Louisiana actor or actress for your production, that person is going to qualify. But if you bring in a lead actor that costs $100,000, $500,000, you want to qualify those costs for your tax credit so you can get 25% of their salary. So when you're doing your analysis, and some of the best states to do your analysis on are New Mexico, Ohio, Louisiana, Georgia, North Carolina. All these states have really nice returns on the amount of money that you spend. They will qualify people that you bring into the state. So it's not just the local labor in the state, but people that you bring to those states, they will qualify their salaries. And they will outline within the instructions on their website exactly how you apply and then how you can prepare your budget and show them the costs within that budget that will qualify for the state so you can start that process. But there's the most important thing to look at when you're looking at the different states is you want to know how you're going to get your money back after you spend it in the state. If you go to New York and you spend a lot of money there, it takes 2 years for you to get your tax credit back. This is a problem for filmmakers. You can't be in a situation where you spent the money in the state and you're waiting 2 years to get your tax credit back. So you also want to analyze how you're going to get your money back. And a lot of different states have very simple processes where you just file a tax return with the state with your qualified costs that have been prepared by you and have been audited by the state. Each state's going to have some process of audit to show exactly the costs that you did spend in the state and making sure that those costs qualify for the state. And once you have that number, you can, in some states, you can file a tax return, and within a few months after that, you actually get your check. So it can be after your production's finished or after you've spent all the money in a particular state, you can get the money back in 3, 4, 5 months. Those are the states that you want to look into, especially if you're an independent film, because you don't have time to wait for 6, 9 months, a year. You don't know where you're going to be in that point. You need that money back for post-production or something else. So it's important to be very diligent in understanding the details about how these states operate, what it takes to qualify, and then how you get your money back. And I would say to everybody on this call, when you're analyzing a state and you really think that you want to go there, I would call the representatives in the state, in the film office, and go through what you think the process says on the website and make sure you're understanding it correctly. And they'll help you go through that process. A lot of these people are very helpful to all of us. So they'll help you make sure that you're making all the right decisions and that you're making your calculations correctly, and then make sure you are clear with them how you get the money back at the end of the day. You need to know that before you decide what state you're going to shoot in, because you don't want to be in a situation where it takes months and months and months to get the money back, because it can get very frustrating. And it just, when it takes too long, you can use that money for things along the way for your production. So that's the important stuff about state incentives. During the class, we'll get into the details of all these different states, really how you can maximize the money, how you spend the money in your budget that will get you more tax credit monies. There's a lot of tricks to the trade that you can learn how to get even more money out of the state. And we really dive into state incentives that will help everybody really learn how to maximize that process. Because that's free money. If we can maximize that free money, it's only going to help our budget and help our production.
Can't you borrow against your state tax incentives?
You can absolutely borrow against your state tax incentives. Once you have an approved application for that state, and they've approved that amount of money that you're going to get back, even before you start shooting, it's technically still an estimate. If you're arranging a bank loan, and we're going to talk a little bit more about domestic distribution and international distribution, which are also, those kinds of contracts can also be discounted by a bank. So we can create a little finance plan where a bank can discount the tax incentive and discount international sales and domestic sales toward the budget of your movie. So we can build a way to get to sometimes 50 or 60% of your budget just by doing those things. So your state incentive is part of the plan with the bank loan, and we'll get into more detail, but all of these states, once you are approved, you can take that to a bank and you can get it discounted and you can get that money for production. You'll pay a finance cost, which will reduce the total amount you're going to get, but you still get 80 to 90% of what your potential tax credit's going to be. So we'll get a little bit more in detail in that when we talk about the bank loan, but I want to keep moving because there's still a lot of stuff to discuss on distribution.
This question is really important, I think, on tax incentives, just to clarify, because people get confused. Is tax incentive a dollar that you receive from the government, or are they tax deductions that you get when filing your taxes?
The tax incentives are related to the company that's filing the application with the state. So if you have a film production company called Go-Go Productions that's producing a movie in Georgia, Go-Go Productions is going to spend money in Georgia. Go-Go Productions is going to fill out an application with the state of Georgia, and you're going to present your budget and the amount of money you're going to spend in Georgia, and you're going to create a tax credit calculation for the amount of money you're going to get back from the state. And it's the corporation that gets the money back from the state, right? So it's all related to the film, and it's all related to your film company that's shooting in Georgia that will be spending the money in Georgia. So it's not a complicated process. It's just a process of having a company, having that company fill out the application in Georgia, doing the analysis and getting the approval from the state of the amount of the credit. So it's got nothing to do with your federal tax return or anyone else's federal tax return. It's just about the money you spend in the state. And if you go to the website for some of these states and you start reading about the incentive, you'll learn a lot more about how it works. But it's a pretty straightforward process. And the states make it that way because they want you to come and shoot your movie there. So let's move on to distribution. I want to start with international distribution because this is a big buzzword with all the independents. Everyone wants to talk about international distribution and how can I sell my movie and who's going to buy it in France and how can I monetize all that kind of stuff. International distribution is great. It's especially for independent movies. It really drives the marketplace. All the international sales agents are looking for great films. They're looking for films with really good directors, with really good casts. And if you have one of those and you find the right sales company, they will want to sell your movie before you start shooting. And when they do that, you can take that contract with who they sell it to. For example, if they sell it to Germany for $100,000, we can take that contract to a bank and the bank will discount that contract and give you that money before you start shooting. So you can actually use that money for your production. So in the finance world, we call it collateral, right? It's collateral against a loan. So there's a value in that contract. And because that contract has a value, there are motion picture lenders that will give you the value of that contract to help you make your movie. So the process of getting international sales done is you have to hire an international sales agent. There's many international sales agents in the business. They all have their own sort of niche markets. Some of them are more focused on genre pictures. Some are more focused on festival-related pictures. They're all, some like more action-related movies, but they're all in the marketplace. They're all looking for films. And if you have the right films that they're looking for, they will take you on as your sales agent and they will represent your movie to the international marketplace and generate sales for you. So it's a very handy tool to help raise money for your movie. So the way you get a sales agent is you have to do your research. You have to find out who are the sales companies out there. And that's up to you as going back to the business person, right? You're a producer. You're a business person. You want the best for your movie. Well, finding the right sales agent for your movie is one of those things that you can do as a producer that's going to give value to your production. And the way you get that value is doing your due diligence, understanding who the sales companies are. Start talking to people that run sales companies. Start meeting people that work at sales companies, meeting the head of the company. Let them know who you are. Let them know what kind of producer you are. So when you have your movie and it's ready to take to a sales company, you know exactly where you want to take it. You don't need to wait until you have the perfect project and then find a sales company. Find a sales company today. Find 4 or 5 sales companies that know who you are. When you call them, they'll pick up the phone because they trust you as a producer and they know that you can deliver a really good picture with the elements that they need in order to make sales. And that's what it comes down to. If you become a producer that can deliver to international sales companies projects that they can sell to their clients, you are going to be in high demand. And there's no reason why anybody on this call cannot become that person. The way you become that person is finding good material, controlling it, finding a good director, and through the director and through your relationships, finding cast. And when you have your script, and you have a director and you potentially have cast, you don't have to have cast, but it's helpful to have your cast. You can go out to your sales company representatives and you can start showing them your project and they can start helping you own your project for the international marketplace that will help them sell your movie and help bring value to your picture. So if you bring them a great script and a great director and you don't have the cast yet, they'll say, the script is great. I love the director. Now let's focus on the cast together, and they'll help you find the right cast that's good for the international marketplace. You don't have to do all of this on your own. You can use international sales companies as your ally to help you increase the value of the picture. Because at that point, you guys become business partners. They're going to sell the movie, but you got to provide the elements to the movie that can help them sell it. So again, study the market. Understand who these international sales companies are. They talk about in the trades, in Deadline, every day. They talk about different sales companies, Filmnation, The Exchange. There's a bunch of different sales companies out there. And then when they announce movies, they say, and the international sales company is so-and-so, and the domestic sales company is so-and-so. So the information is out there. Plus, talk to your friends, talk to other producers, talk to Jen Page. She knows a lot of sales companies. You can also talk to me. There's lots of ways to get the information, but you have to do the research and you have to find the right company for your movie. For example, if someone on this call had an under $1 million action movie that they wanted to make and they wanted a sales company, I know the guy that sells a lot of under $1 million action movies. He's got a whole market for that. So that's the kind of, you directly go to him and you start working with him to make sure bring value to that picture, which allows him to sell it. And then you can get the movie made, right? So it's really, again, this is a business. You've got to look at all these different pieces of the business and you've got to learn how they work. How they work is not above anybody on this call. Everybody on this call can learn how to do this. You just have to have the impetus to go out there and do it. And it's not something that can't be done. So you have to realize you can't be scared or you can't pretend like you can't do something. All of this stuff you can do. You just have to learn the steps. And once you've done it once, you'll realize it's really not that complicated. The good news is the world for film producers is set up for you to succeed. There's a way you can hire great cast. There's a way to hire people that will sell your movie and give you money before you even made it, right? There's many, many directors out there that would love to be part of your movie because you have a great script. So it's all waiting for you as the kind of person you are and the kind of business person that you are to go out and just do it. And when you do it, you will find out that you can do it again and you can do it again. It's not something that's not achievable at any level. Work within learning those steps. Everyone's going to do it a little bit differently. You have to find your method that works for you and go out and do it that way. And you will find success in what you're doing. When you hire these sales companies, you're going to have to make a deal with them. So when you make the contract you make with them is a sale. When you hire an international sales company, you need to enter into a sales agency agreement. These guys get a commission on everything that they sell, anywhere between 15 and 20%. So that's how they get paid, right? So they want to find movies that they can sell because they need to earn their commissions. So these guys are selling 2, 3, 4 movies at a time. They're not just selling your movie. They have a business of selling movies internationally. So you kind of have to understand what they do and then make sure you're fitting in with what they want to accomplish within their business structure, right? So understand that they're probably selling 2 or 3 movies at every big market, the American film market, at Cannes, and there's various other markets during the year. The Toronto Film Festival is another big market, and they have new films at each one of those markets, and they sell them, and they get their 10 to 15 to 20% commission on what they sell. So you have to build that into your plan. If they sell Germany for $1 million, right, or $100,000, and they get 10% commission, then you've already given up $10,000 of that sale. But that's okay because you still have a $90,000 amount of money that you can put towards your movie. But you have to understand that these guys get sales commissions for everything that they sell. They also want a little bit of a marketing fee. So they like to build in $25,000 to $100,000 depending on the budget of the movie. So you have to be prepared for it. There's costs associated with hiring an international sales company. And within their sales agency agreement will be their commission and a little bit of marketing costs. And then they'll talk about, they'll give you worldwide estimates to what your movie's worth, which is really beneficial because when you get estimates of what the movie's worth, that's something that you can show an investor, right? We're building up documents and proof for investors how much the movie potentially is worth, right? If your movie is worth $1 million, you can't make it for $1.5 million, right? because you're not going to recoup $1.5 million because it's only worth $1 million because your sales company is saying this is all that can be sold around the world for this movie. So it helps you plan your budget. It helps you plan a strategy with your investors. It helps you plan a strategy as a business person. Do I want to even make this movie? If I make this movie and I can only sell it for $1 million, it's going to cost me $1 million to make it. I'm going to make a $10,000 fee in the budget. Do I want to work for $10,000 for the next year, right? And these are questions that you need to answer for yourself as a business person, as a producer. But there also may be times where you have a project that's worth $2 million and you figured out how to make it for $1.5 million, right? And then you're also going to get money from a state, right? You go to Georgia and let's say you get $300,000 for shooting in Georgia. All of a sudden, to make a profit, you only need $1.2 million, and you have worldwide sales estimates at $2 million. That's where the business starts getting interesting. So those are the kind of situations that you want to look at as a producer and figure out how much is it going to cost me to make this movie and where is the money coming in that's going to eventually return on investment. And in the class, we're going to spend time developing a business plan, how you can do international sales, how you can do your tax incentives, how you can get a bank loan, and how you can plan ahead of time what the movie's going to look like from a profitability standpoint. And then as you're building your pitch for investors, you not only have a creative pitch about how great the movie is and who's in it and what a great producer you are, you also can say, we're shooting in Georgia and we're going to get 30% of our budget from shooting in Georgia. And then you can maybe explain that a little bit. And then you can say, I have an international sales company that's involved in the movie and they provided me film estimates based on my script and my director and my cast. And I can show you what they're estimating the movie's worth. And those are all important things that investors want to see if they're going to invest in your movie, right? So we want to build a case for the movie. We want to build a case for outside investors. And we as producers want to understand what we're building so we can make sure the time and energy we're putting into this process is the time and energy we want based on the benefit we're going to get from it, right? Nobody can work for free. We have to find a way to make money at this process and do the thing that we love the most, which is making movies. And that's what this class teaches you is the practical ways that you can approach your projects and understand how to build a project from basically just a screenplay all the way to getting a bank loan, doing sales, shooting in Georgia, and creating a finance plan where you understand how much money it's going to cost you to make the movie, and then potentially how much money you have coming in to that project. And then you can make a professional decision. Do I want to do this or do I not want to do this? And it's actually a very empowering process because you get to build it the way you want to build it. You don't have to go to a studio and ask them to make your movie. You're taking control of the process. And when you take control of the process, it's empowering. And you as a producer are creating a project that you're making and you decide which direction you want to go. But what our class teaches you is the different directions that you can take, and then you can decide what's the best for you. And unless you know this stuff, it's really hard to understand how to maneuver through the independent film world because it's constantly changing. But if you know how it works, if you know how international distribution works, if you know how tax credits in states work, right? If you can get a value for your movie from an international sales company that's going to sell your movie, you can show that to people and say, this is what it's worth. And then you can show them a budget. This is how much it's going to cost to make. And those are all really important elements that help you get to the finish line of actually producing that movie. Okay, so let's touch base a little bit on domestic distribution, and then we'll talk about a bank loan, and then we'll answer some questions. So domestic distribution is basically US and Canada distribution. It's got nothing to do with all the other territories in the world. Domestic distribution is only considered US and Canada. International distribution is every other country outside the US and Canada. So you can there's some companies that do domestic and international distribution. So they'll sell your domestic rights and they'll sell the movie all over the world. Or you may have a specific relationship with a domestic distributor that just buys the US and Canadian rights and separately have a sales agent that sells the international rights. And you as the producer can make that decision of which one is the best for which movie. But the domestic distributors are the ones that will release the movie, in theaters here in the United States, which is always a conversation that everyone has. And it's something that every filmmaker wants, right? So you want to find the right company that has the ability to release it in the United States. They also have the ability to give you a number of what the movie's worth in the United States. Hey, here's my director, here's my cast. And they'll tell you, listen, we can give you $1 million for the US rights. We can give you $500,000 for the US rights, whatever that number is. At least you know what the US rights are worth, right? And then separately, you can now, what's the value of your international rights? And you kind of put those two together, and that's how much the total amount of money that the movie will bring in. But having relationships with domestic distributors is very important for any producer. You need to go out and you need to meet these guys, right? Every weekend on Monday morning, in Deadline, it talks about which movies were released this past weekend and how much money they did at the box office. You can learn about all the different distributors that are out there that are releasing these movies. And some of the movies that they talk about in Deadline are only released in 50 theaters, right? It's not all the big movies. The big movies are usually the first 3 movies they talk about, but then there's 7 other movies below that have been released in less than 100 screens. In some cases, that may be your movie. Find out who's releasing those movies that in 100 theaters that you may want to be in business with. Get the name of the company. Look them up in IMDb Pro. Look at the other movies that they distribute. Is this the right company for me, or is it not the right company for me, right? A lot of this process of producing is doing your due diligence, learning the marketplace, learning who the players are, figuring out how to meet the players that you want to be in business with. I've been doing this for 25, 30 years. I still need to meet new people all the time because the market's changing. And if I'm not out there meeting new people, I'm not doing my job as a producer, because there's people that come and there's people that go. And if you're going to be a good producer, you've got to be flexible with the marketplace and meet the people that are out there that are current. There's new distributors all the time that you need to meet. There's new people out there you need to meet all the time. Basically, being a producer is a lifestyle. It's not a job. It's 24/7 every single day. And that's the beauty of it. And it can also be the bad part of it, right? We may want to do other things with our lives. But if you really want to be a producer and you want to make movies on a constructive and consistent manner, you've got to look at it as a lifestyle. Every person you meet can be helpful to you. Some of those people you can be helpful to. You can be helpful to them. It's a give and take, but you constantly have to be out there meeting people, talking about the projects that you have that you want to make, not in an obnoxious way, just in a way is that you're passionate about what you do. And you basically hang around a lot of filmmakers and they get to know each other and you all help each other. So learning the marketplace, learning the domestic distributors, learning the international distributors, figuring out which of these kinds of companies are best for your movie, and then finding ways to get in to meet the people there so they know who you are. As a producer, you got to break down some doors, and hey, these people, you got to see them face to face. And if it has to be a Zoom, it has to be a Zoom. That's fine. But get in front of them, get them to know your name, get them to take your calls when you have a project. Call them when you have something interesting. Stay in touch with them. Lunches, phone calls, updates. See them at festivals. See them at markets. Make appointments with them at markets. Have planned lunches and coffees and the whole thing. All of that is the most important part of this business, because each one of these people have information that you may not have that can be valuable for you to making your project. So having relationships also help you get a feel for the marketplace from many different people. And it really is an education process, and you can get your education from lots of different people. So always have your contacts, study the companies who are making movies, who's distributing movies, and keep your lists of who's in those companies and try and meet as many of those people as you can. Again, when Jen and I are teaching this class, international distribution and domestic distribution are important parts of the film business. We really dive in deep on how you make these relationships, strategies, understanding business points about distribution agreements, understanding a business distribution plan. They're all important things to understanding distribution. And then the more you understand, the easier the process will be for you. Just real fast, on the bank loans, getting a bank loan is not a problem as long as you have the collateral, right? So the collateral is something, the value that the bank will loan against. And in the movie business, that is a contract for distribution. It could be a contract with France, Germany, Italy, or it could be a contract with the United States, right? On all of those contracts, there will be a minimum guarantee that that distributor will pay for that movie. And the reality is the studios do the same thing. They make deals with domestic and international distributors. In some cases, it's their own company in Germany, but in other cases, they have to go outside their realm and they have to do the same thing. Studios do exactly what I'm talking about that independents do. You're not alone in this process. Every movie goes through the same thing. It has to be sold. If a movie is screening in France, that movie was sold to a French distributor. That distributor paid a minimum guarantee. When that movie was finished and you delivered the elements to that distributor, they paid the MG. It's the same thing that the studios do with that distributor in France. It's the same thing you're going to do through your international sales company. They'll make that deal in France, you will deliver the elements, and they'll pay you an MG for the rights to that movie in France. It happens across the board, doesn't matter what size the movie is. So understand what you're doing is the same thing that movie studios do. It's no different. You're just doing it at a smaller level and you're doing it more on an independent level because you don't have the same resources as the studio, which is fine. Movies still get made that are outside the studio system. But understand that when you do generate collateral, you can get a bank loan. And if your bank loan matches 100% of the budget, then you've met your strike price, which means you have the amount of money to be able to make the movie. And that's what banks do. So it can be a combination between a bank loan and a private investor. So the finance plan can become a couple of different things, but we'll walk through all the different finance plans, how you build a finance plan, and what is the easiest way, and also ways you want to stay away from finance plans. Things you don't want to do as part of your finance plan, because it's an important part of the process, and you want to make sure that part is really focused on, because that's going to get you to the finish line. A very good finance plan and a plan to be able to actually create that plan and finish it. A finance plan that can't get finished isn't a finance plan. It's a disaster. What you want is a finance plan that works. You take the steps and you finish your finance plan and you have the movie made. And that's what we're going to focus on in this class. So let's take some questions, because I don't want to lose too much time and not answer some.
So this is really fantastic info. My main question is where exactly do we find investors? Like, where do we go to? Who, like, what site, what place, where do we find them?
Okay, so if we define investor as like an equity investor, someone that just will give you money to own part of the movie, right? Is that what you mean by an investor?
Yeah, like an angel investor, somebody to invest in the film.
In a way, everybody you get in, if you sell a movie to France and they're giving you an MG, that's still kind of an investment in the movie. That's a different kind of thing. So if you're looking for an investor who's going to put up equity, they're going to give you X amount of money to own 20% of the movie, right? Where do you find that person? Rob, you're going to have to figure out where you find that person. And the way you figure that out is you get out in the community and you start talking to people. And like what I was saying earlier in the conversation is you need, as a producer, to have a plan, to have a bullet point conversation with somebody when you meet that investor. You can meet investors at film festivals. I meet investors when I go to friends' movies that screen and, they have after parties. I've met 2 or 3 film investors at just a screening of a friend's movie. Because
I also think that people forget that when you're first talking about investors, if you're talking about your first indie film kind of thing, you're usually talking about friends and family. You're talking about friends of friends, friends of friends of friends. That network is where you get your first money always. It's harder to go out to strangers to get money. But I do know friends who have gone out to, they've made connections with rich people and they just wine and dine them until it's time to ask for that drop. So like Jim was saying earlier, it's a full-time job. It's exhausting. It's the worst part of filmmaking is finding money to make our films.
Jen said is exactly right. You go to your family first, right? Let's say you want to develop a script that costs $10,000, and it's a great script, it's a book, and you want to option it. You go to your friends and family and say, I'm going to make this movie. I need $10,000. And that's the easiest and best way to do it. If they have other money that later on they're willing to put in, that's fantastic. But you also need to make a plan of how people are going to get their money back. You don't want to take money from somebody and not have a plan to explain to them how they're going to get it back. And the other part of that is you've got to be honest with them and say, listen, this movie may not get made. There's a lot of risk associated with this. You don't want the burden of you telling somebody something that's a little bit maybe not true, but not in a bad way, but just, because they don't know what they're doing. And you want to make sure you get them their money back. So it's a real delicate conversation, but family is the best place to go to get started. Once you make your first movie, you've got, a lot more options, but it's a lot of work. But that's why we make a finance plan. Maybe you don't need to raise that much money. Maybe by going to certain states and doing other things, you can find the money. And it's, but you've got to have that finance plan. How much is the movie worth? How much do you need from an investor? You can't go to an investor, say, I want you to invest in my movie. And they say, great, what do you need? And you go, well, I think the movie's going to cost around $1 million. Wrong answer. Hey, I'm shooting this movie in Georgia. I'm getting 25% of my money from Georgia. I need 30% from you of $1 million budget. I need $300,000. If that's something you can do, you can own 30% of the movie, and we can be partners and we can make a great movie together. That's the answer you want to.
Like Jen was saying too, it also helps if you say, I already have a money guarantee from this distributor, yada yada.
Thank you so much, Jim, for this workshop. It's been amazing. I just wanted to say, the last person asking a question, I play tennis, and I live in New York City, and I didn't intend to meet investors. But I had gotten hired by a trust fund guy to create an indie series for him. And in the process of developing it, different tennis people just kept asking me, like, what do you do? What part are you working on? And, then finally we finished shooting, we got in post. And it turns out a lot of those women were all women who are Broadway investors. So the transition to investing in film and an interest in my projects was an easy transition. So I'm just throwing out sports. I know golf is similar for people.
I think it's smart. And I because that's the reason I started pickleball, is because it's so easy to go to more people in LA. You could just meet people really easy. So I agree.
Yeah. But my question is, so I did get hired to create this. I was given a 7-figure budget to create this series, and it's a TV indie series. We could potentially package it. So we're in our second edit. We did a first edit, we went to a cast and crew screening. And to everybody's surprise, not mine, but everybody else's, people really loved it. And then we got people from the post house that does The Bear, and we got an editor, original editor for Legally Blonde. Different bigger people came aboard to re-edit it. And now we're back in post. I'm finishing the film, and we should be done. And then I'm in the process of looking at sales agents and, international sales, and just getting even distributors. I was able to garner 2 distribution deals that were tiny. And also, when I had looked up their reputation just on Facebook groups with filmmakers, they didn't have great reputation. So I guess my question is, first of all, I know it's going to be harder, but for indie TV, which I know is not a really popular thing, are there specific film distributors or film sales agents that are specific in that genre itself?
Is it 50 minutes or 90 minutes or 100? It's not feature length.
It is feature length. If you put it all together, it's a 90-minute drama comedy. It's called Mother May I Have a Kidney, and it's about it's about reconciliation and forgiveness. A guy needs a kidney, and the only match is his estranged mother. He's been estranged from for 10 years.
So if it wasn't a feature, would it be we could just make 30-minute episodes, 3 30-minute episodes or 4 30-minute episodes or something?
I made 6 15-minute episodes.
Okay.
So they're cut up with. But we also thought you could make it a chaptered film. Of course, it has a cliffhanger at the end. So then you'd be like, there has to be a film too, or there definitely is the second season, which I've already have drafted in my head. But
I would approach it 2 ways. I would see if you could sell it as a feature, and there are specific people that will buy TV stuff. And I know there's companies out there, because a friend of mine was just telling me about someone that they work with that only buys movies that are 20 minutes long, or material that's 20 minutes long. So those kind of companies are out there. It was sort of the Tubi model a year or 2 ago, and it didn't work. But there's still people out there doing that. But try and sell it as a feature, and then that can be a pilot to a series as well. You don't have to just start with the series, then keep the series going. You can have a pilot to a series. And listen, if you've got 100 minutes of material and you can sell 100 minutes, that's what I would look at doing.
Okay.
Unless you find those companies that do the shorter length stuff and they buy that kind of stuff and they're out there, you can approach them. But find a sale. If anyone needs somebody I might be able to give you the name of somebody who sells TV separately. So if you wanted to touch base with Jen, you can get my email and I can give you some ideas.
Thank you so much, Jen. Thanks, Jen.
Good luck. Good luck. Keep teaching tennis.
No, I don't teach tennis. I just play.
Okay. Keep playing tennis. It's working.
Yeah, thanks.
Jim, do you have any final thought?
My only thing I think everyone needs to, kind of wrap their head around is the market's always changing. So as long as you have that flexibility to change, you may have to change your project a little bit, just be aware that things are going to change, and it's just part of the world that we're in. So just try and stay up with all the trends that are out there, and find ways to use it to your advantage. Like, there are companies that buy stuff that you make for 20 minutes. There's different ways to do all this stuff. And as you get out there and as you're making things, you will find out there's all kinds of different options that you never even knew existed. So be open to